Thanks for joining us for Jamaica Magazine. This is a special Issues and Answers interview with the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. I'm Ian Boyne. Prime Minister, good to have you on the show.
It's good for you to have invited me on your show.
Great. Crime, Prime Minister, this is the issue uppermost on people's minds. My question is, do you have the courage to take on the powerful, very vocal defense lawyers, those in the human rights lobby, who would resist any tough measure at all? Do you have that courage to take them on?
I don't want the narrative to emerge that we are going to be tough on crime. We have heard that said before. The narrative which we want to emerge is that we're going to be bold, that we are going to take the reasonable steps necessary to make a stepwise reduction in crime in Jamaica. We don't intend to do it in a dictatorial fashion. It must be reasonable. At the end of the day, civil society, public opinion is very strong in Jamaica. And so we intend to engage the public to be a part of the conversation about what is necessary to change in our justice system, in our law enforcement system, to bring about the reduction in crime that everyone wants.
But what you would regard as your reasonable suggestion about the repealing of the Bail Act to disallow bail for murder in certain circumstances has already received sharp responses from defense lawyers. Already you have been lectured that you are not a lawyer, that you must keep out of those matters, and that your suggestion, if implemented, would be unconstitutional.
Well, the beauty of Jamaica is the ability for all stakeholders to make their points. Some make them more vociferously than others. My job is to listen to everyone, respect the freedom that people have to express their views, to engage them, and to put in place a process where all views can contend and we eventually agree on a position. The Attorney General, the Minister of National Security, and the Minister of Justice all will, in the near future, in the sectoral debate, lay out our case, and it will be up for public debate.
Do you get a sense, Prime Minister, that the criminals are running scared? Or do you get the sense that they are emboldened? They listen to the conversation taking place in civil society, and they get an impression, don't you, sense, that the pressure is not so much on them?
You know, I've traveled Jamaica. I've been to, I would say, 90% of communities. Rural, urban, inner city, middle class, working class, you name it. I've been to some places that are not even recorded on our maps. And universally, there is a concern about crime. Not all of them experience crime, but they see it in the media. And there is a sense that is emerging that people can commit crime,
get away with it,
without being either ever caught, convicted. So there is a sense that justice is being delayed, and therefore people feel justice is denied. So it's not just a law enforcement issue, it is also a justice issue. So the sense that criminals can act without fear, yes, there is that sense, and the public is growing increasingly tired of this. They feel that the criminal justice system is almost a revolving door.
And you have the courage, your administration has the courage, you think your security minister has the courage to go with the gut feelings of the majority of Jamaicans rather than a vocal and powerful.
Again, I don't want to set up a confrontation. I feel that I must reflect the views of the people within what is legal and reasonable. And so there is, I believe, scope within what is legal and reasonable for the government to make effective changes.
The issue of auxiliary fees, Prime Minister, that's an area where there has been some controversy. There are those who say that as laudable as the government's policy of abolishing auxiliary fees is, it is not practicable. It will not result in better resources going to an already starved education sector. Is this a case where intention is good, but we really don't have the capacity to carry out that intention?
I think we should reflect carefully on this argument. So if the argument is we don't have the resources to give to an already starved education
Yes.
sector, and increasing the tuition fee per student is precisely giving more resources to a starved system, why object to it? The truth is that no school can claim 100% compliance with entry fees. None. What this will do is to increase technically government subsidy per student, the entry fee per student, to approximately $19,000 per student. This will increase the intake by all schools.
So
I can't understand the complaint. In other words, schools will now have a more certain cash flow than they had before. Certainly, upgraded high schools would have a higher cash flow and more certainty. Traditional high schools that have strong PTA base and parent base, they too would also have more certain and a higher cash flow. And those parents who can pay will continue to contribute. We did it before, no schools closed. It didn't stop any improvement in the schools. We understand that not all schools are the same. Some schools offer far more in their program than others. But giving all students more is just better for the system. So if the government is giving all students at the high school level an additional amount for the school that they go to, there shouldn't be a complaint.
But if it were as simple as you've explained it, Prime Minister,
But it is.
why would the principals themselves, are they daft that they can't see what you're explaining as so commonsensical? Is it something that they know that?
I would say to you, it is that simple. The evidence that is there about compliance does not suggest that the removal of tuition fees will in any way adversely affect the cash flow of the schools. In any event, it cannot be argued that it is a public good to have each Jamaican child, regardless of economic status or social status, having access to secondary education. I don't think the principals can argue that secondary education should not be universal. And our position is that between your 3rd birthday and your 18th birthday, you must be attached to an educational institution, which means that if we are literally creating this now, almost not just an entitlement, but almost a right, except that it is not enshrined in our Constitution, then to argue against that would be saying that some persons should only be able to access secondary education by virtue of their ability to pay.
But the issue, Prime Minister, is not so much the desirability of the right, but affordability. Can the government afford to do this? There are any number of desirable and ideal
But
things
again,
the government might not be able to do.
but
Can
again-
the government afford?
but again-
is it sustainable?
Again, I want people to reflect on their argument. So can the government afford to spend an additional $1 billion during an election to fix roads? Government is always faced with making choices. So it's not what the government can or cannot do. It is what the government chooses to do. And our government is choosing to spend more on education to remove any barriers to entry.
And a previous Jamaica Labour Party government had instituted the no user fee in hospitals. And people have said that their experience with that has been a negative one, that here was a case where the motive was laudable, but the actual practice turned out not to be so favorable. How would you
There's always an issue of the definition of the service. What can you freely access? And the policy was not properly explained. The policy of the Jamaica Labour Party is that every Jamaican should be able to access the healthcare system at the time of need freely. And that is what is meant by our no user fee policy. It doesn't mean that at some other point you don't pay. But when you need it, the issue of your being able to afford it should not come up. So the policy was always that there should be a contributory health scheme, health insurance scheme, that you pay as you can. And it will be scaled and accordingly set up. The Minister of Health is working on that as we speak, so that there is a contribution being made. But at the time of your illness, which you may not have the $2,000 or the $3,000 or the $10,000 to go and see the doctor, you should be able to go and access the health service. And that is taken care of based upon your contribution and the contribution of many who are putting in the pool against a health risk. And that is what is done universally all around the world. The WHO, all the people who speak on health, have basically endorsed this as an important strategy in ensuring the health of the society. And some of the arguments that are being posited, I would say, need to be carefully considered.
Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, speaking to us on a variety of issues which are on your mind, and he's providing us with the answers. We take a break, but we'll be right back.
This is the Aedes aegypti mosquito that spreads the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. Protect yourself from the bite of this mosquito. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back to this Jamaica Magazine special. We are speaking to the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. Prime Minister, the issue of raising up those at the bottom, the middle class, and how that relates to your announcement about the increased NHD benefits. What does it say about your government's philosophy about giving back to those at the bottom, and what impact will this have?
The policy of the government is to move as many people from the base of the society out of poverty and help them to self-actualize, to achieve their aspirations, to fulfill themselves. So it is, I don't want to call it a prosperity doctrine, but it is trying to give hope to everyone. And I well understand the Jamaican psyche. Everybody wants to step up in a life. And part of that stepping up is owning a piece of land or owning your own home. And the government ought to provide that clear pathway towards that. And that is what we have done in this budget, trying to provide a clear pathway for social mobility.
And you would say that your tax plan plus the increased NHT benefits go a far way to doing that, giving back to the people, providing a stimulus and an incentive to them.
You know, I don't want it to be interpreted as, you know, the government redistributing resources, just taking it up and giving it. That's not the narrative.
What's wrong with that?
Well, you know, what I would prefer to say is that the government has created an atmosphere that enables, right? Because it's not for free. We want you to do something with this. There is a quid pro quo, right? We are giving
What you want.
and you are going to do something with it,
What you want people
right?
to
And
do.
what we want people to do is to start taking longer term decisions, to start taking decisions to save and invest over consuming, to spend on things that are going to build your future than to just consume your whatever you get today. So the idea is we want you to invest in building your homes, whether it is to expand or to acquire. That will drive the economy. That will create more jobs. That will give people greater stake in their communities. So they will want to ensure that their community is safer, is well kept. It gives them a better stake in their environment. It makes them invested in Jamaica. And that is what we want to do. We want people to feel that they have a stake in Jamaica to protect.
Prime Minister, you're running up against a cultural stream of foreign consumption, a stream against the postponement of gratification, a culture that is generally a hedonistic culture. This means that a values and attitudes emphasis is necessary. Is the government paying attention to this?
The government is very much paying attention to this. We will shortly announce what we will be doing to not restart because we haven't ended, but to bring back the partnership into the center of attention and to make some tweaks, some changes to it, to probably expand it and to give more duties and responsibilities. So the idea of a social partnership to change the value structure, the value system, is something that we endorse, we embrace. We are trying to infuse in the value system a change from a pessimistic view of the future to an optimistic view of the future. Hence our thrust on prosperity rather than poverty. We want people not to accept and embrace poverty, but to enter into this constant struggle for change for the better, and that there can be better. And so the government has to create that clear pathway for better. And we need the partnership program to do that. We need to have the churches on board. We need to have the unions on board. What are their roles in all of this? And I would say within another week or so, you would hear more about our plans as to how we intend to bring the partnership back into the center of focus.
Do you mean the Partnership Council,
Yes.
the Partnership of Jamaica that the
Yes.
leader of the opposition
Yes.
had asked for?
Yes.
So this government is not going to discontinue. You can say that to the country.
We never did.
You never did.
My
committed.
inauguration presentation was a partnership for prosperity. And so we intend to continue. I've assigned Minister Derek Smith to work with the Partnership Council, and we're coming up with some reforms to it, as I said, to ensure that the pathway that we have created, that is also part.
But the government
of
is
the
not
partnership.
abandoning the Partnership
No,
Council.
we couldn't abandon the partnership. We never did. You know, unlike the previous government that abandoned the partnership when we were the government. You know, when we were in opposition, we did not abandon the partnership, even though we had disagreements with what they expected us
And you
to
didn't
sign on
sign
to. But we
the
didn't abandon. We maintained our observer status, and we participated when we found it possible to do so.
Okay, and that will continue.
So partnership is important. you know, I don't see Jamaican democracy moving ahead without the partnership.
Yes.
It's now an important estate, call it that, in the society.
The leader of the opposition, in her budget presentation, raised questions about how persons in her party were being treated in the public sector, raised questions as to the government's commitment to non-partisanship and in allowing the professionalization of the public service and not putting any pressure on public servants.
The leader of the opposition made some tangential comments.
Yes.
And I have since investigated and found that there is no truth to the concerns that she has raised.
People are not being asked about which party they voted for, that kind of thing.
I am not aware of that.
that.
I've asked around, and that has not come to my
And
attention.
you wouldn't countenance that kind of thing at all.
Strict instructions have been given about any kind of partisan witch hunt. But at the same time, it must be clear that persons who are not doing their jobs should not hide under the cover of they are being politically targeted. When I introduced myself to the staff here, I was very clear. If you do your work, we are best of friends. If you don't do your work, then there has to be some consequence. So everyone who is in the public sector should understand that this government is about getting things done. And if it is your strategy then to delay, to frustrate, to undermine, then the government cannot sit by idly and allow its policies to fail. So in as much as we will maintain a professional stance, people who undermine, frustrate, delay, or cause any failure of government policy will have to bear a consequence. And that is said without any malice. It is just a straightforward management position.
Yes. Prime Minister, 80% of the Jamaican youth say if given an opportunity, they would leave Jamaica. What concretely will your government be offering the young people of this country as an encouragement to stay, as an encouragement to see Jamaica as the land of their dreams? What can re-engage the energies of the youth, the way the youth of the 60s and the 70s were engaged?
Well, I think the first practical thing is work. And work may not mean employment, but work may mean engagement. Again, giving them a stake in something. So they can be working to learn, they can be working to earn, they can be working to give, and they can be working to save. But they have to be engaged in a productive activity where at the end of the day, they are better off than they were when they started. And we are now in the process of developing this comprehensive policy of work, of getting our young people engaged. You know, when you reflect on Brand Jamaica and the value that has been added to Brand Jamaica, it has really come from the poor working youth of Jamaica.
It's true.
If you take, for example, a Usain Bolt,
yes,
who is now the flag bearer for Brand Jamaica. His work in athletics, because it is work. When you see him train and you see the dedication to his training and how he is just so infectious with his spirit of encouraging other people to come around. Can you imagine if we had other ambassadors like that who were similarly engaged? So if you look at track and field as being work, engagement, it's not employment. Some of them don't get paid, but they're engaged. They love what they do. We have to create similar opportunities in other areas where young people can love what they do and make their commitment. And I'm certain that if we have more areas like that, you'll have many more Usain Bolts, because we are truly a talented people. So the idea is to get every single Jamaican engaged in something that is going to see them working for learning, improving their skills, making them better citizen workers, working for earning, whether or not they're going to become entrepreneurs, they're going to staff businesses, or they're going to lead large-scale enterprises, or they're going to work to give, they're going to volunteer part of their time to help others, or they're going to work to save, to acquire their home or a car or start a business. But they must be involved in something.
The manufacturing sector, the productive sector, the goods producing sector, this sector has been under strain. What is your government going to do about this sector? Not the services sector, about which there has been a great deal of things said and done, but manufacturing.
Well,
production.
Here's, again, I don't want the narrative to emerge that the government is going to try to promote one sector over the other. Government's role is to create the atmosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, some people say playing field. I say the atmosphere.
Oh.
To ensure that all the industries can compete and grow. Because the truth is, services will compete for resources against manufacturing. They're competing for the same labor pool.
But if
they're competing for the same energy.
Are behind.
So there are some things that government must do.
To stimulate.
For example, the government has to ensure low energy prices. And the government will continue with the energy policy that we put in place to ensure that our energy prices remain low and continue to go down. So that's number one. Number two, it really matters not whether it is manufacturing or agriculture or services. What matters is that wherever the enterprise exists, the firm exists, it has a market to sell. So the government's responsibility is to ensure that Jamaica has markets, which is why we're looking very closely at the markets near to us. What is the situation with CARICOM? Why is it that CARICOM is not providing a bigger market for Jamaica? And I don't start from the position of blaming CARICOM. I start from the position, let us look at what we are not doing to get our products into the CARICOM markets. And then there are about 30 million people within a 90-mile radius of us, which we have not exploited. Haiti, Cuba, Dominican Republic. What are we doing in those areas? There's the Bahamas, and you have Turks and Caicos, and you have Cayman. All of them are fairly wealthy markets, which we can supply. They're buying many of their agricultural items from the United States. They do purchase some from Jamaica, but more could be sold. What are we doing? So government's role is to expand markets. Firms can't grow, and the Jamaican population simply cannot provide the growth for our firms. So we have to provide, the government has to be instrumental in making markets and expanding markets and improving our trade deals so that our firms can get access to larger markets. All right, that's the second thing that we have to do. The other thing that we have to do is to train our human resources. All right, so agriculture can compete for the human resources, or manufacturing or services, but we have to ensure that every single Jamaican is at a certain level of educational capability and competence in application skills that allow firms to be productive. All right, and then there's the issue of safety and security generally. So the strategy of the government isn't to look at this sector versus that sector versus that sector. The strategy of the government is to how do we make it easier for businesses overall. Businesses need energy, cheap energy. They need a well-educated labor force. They need markets. They need access to reasonable finance. They need certainty in government policy. And they need efficient government bureaucracy. So that's where my focus is.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
It has been a delight. This has been a JIS special issues and answers on Jamaica Magazine, featuring an interview with the Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness. We thank you for your company. Next week we'll be back. Until then, Ian Boyne wishing you a pleasant day.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.